Alright, everyone, today we're talking about the sign of Taurus and the three decans of Taurus. So, the three decans of Taurus are such: Venus, Mercury, and Saturn. The first decan of Taurus is the decan of Taurus, Taurus. Yes, that is a Taurus, decan of Taurus. Say that 5 times fast. So, this has to do with Venus. And so this particularly has to do with the physical world. All things physical. The earth signs are the most physical by their nature. Taurus, being fixed earth, is the most earth. So it is the most physical of the physical signs in the zodiac. So this has to do with the five senses: touch, taste, see, hearing, and smell. Those are the five senses the physical senses. As for else with Taurus, this has to do with beauty, art. This has to do with the lack of movement, because Taurus is fixed earth. Taurus is stubborn. Now, all of the fixed signs have an air of stubbornness to them as they are fixed. And they have an air of, being fixed in their ways. Scorpio and Aquarius kind of being slightly more difficult to understand. However, Taurus also has to do with the physical body. Now, while we look at the opposite sign of Scorpio, Scorpio has to do with procreation and death. Well, Taurus has to do with life and the material world and the physical body that is used to procreate. Because after all, you can't really procreate humans without humans. The same applies for other animals. Just saying. Now, Taurus also has to do with the self, your money, your assets, your achievements. And so Taurus is inherently also a selfish sign. Now, selfish and greedy are not one and the same. Selfish is a little different than greedy. Greed actually, when taken a deeper look into, has to do with the two base emotions, love and fear. Greed usually, almost always, stems from fear. Greed is usually, oftentimes, well, I wouldn't say usually, but is oftentimes a mask for envy and fear. Oftentimes, those that are greedy feel the need to hoard resources or, hoarding money and power, because they are afraid of someone else having said money and power. That's the difference. Taurus simply just represents the physical world. And so Taurus, the first decan of Taurus being Venusian, has to appeal to things like luxury, art, the senses, entertainment, beauty, the physical body being beautiful. Yes, it can be quite shallow. Well, obviously, because Taurus is the opposite of Scorpio. Scorpio is deep water, so it would make sense that Taurus is shallow because, it's the opposite of fixed water. Pun intended. And the second decan of Taurus, and as I explained before in the decans of Aries, the decans of Taurus go as such: from 0 degrees Taurus to all the way up to 10 degrees Taurus. So it's from 0 degrees Taurus approaching 10 degrees Taurus. Now, for those of you that are analytical, you can go into the minutes and seconds of angle, which, would be a good fit for talking about Virgo, since Virgo represents being detailed and analytical. So there you have it. That's the second decan of Taurus. Now, the second decan of Taurus, the decan of Virgo, has to do with, well, craftsmanship. Something such as, looking at the minute details. This could be engineering. This could be something such as, measuring out chemicals, where you got to get down to the micrograms, of micrograms. It's exact. It's precise. There's little to no margin for error. And so this can have to do with physical manufacturing. The Virgo decan of Taurus, that's all about quality control. And, in a world where a lot of us take, our material possessions for granted and the material infrastructure around us for granted, it's easy to take something such as quality control and manufacturing for granted. Now, on to the next decan of Taurus, that's Capricorn. This has to do with the skeleton. This has to do with the structure that underlies everything. Think more big. Virgo has to do with the minutia. Capricorn has to be the infrastructure that supports all the physicality of Taurus. So, you got a big muscular body, think of some really handsome, hunky guy. Well, he's got to be healthy. Health and looks kind of go hand in hand. And, well, he's going to have a strong skeleton to support all that muscle and to, make him look good. Because without a good skeleton, he's just going to be a blob of meat and organs. And, well, it's not really considered handsome by conventional standards. Like I said, Taurus, fixed earth. It's the opposite of fixed water, so it's shallow. Now, as for Capricorn, like we just said, Capricorn for the Saturn decan of Taurus has to do with the structure underneath everything. It's got to last. It's got to stand. Just like the skeleton, it's going to stay well after death. After all the meat and guts rot away, the skeleton stays intact. And if, the conditions are right enough, that skeleton will become fossilized into hard rock. So there you have it for the Decans of Taurus. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.